Sometimes in life, we are confronted with situations so embarrassing that our only wish is to sink very quickly and very deeply into the ground, where no one will be able to see us anymore. Playing the invisible man will certainly not solve the embarrassment or diminish a bit, yet it is a typically human reaction that we have here. What could we really do, for example, if we found ourselves in the very unenviable situation of this MMA fighter, who got a pretty good knockout after he taunted his opponent several times by doing a stupid dance? And what would our reaction have been, if the same thing happened to us as to this TV host, who couldn't prevent a loud laugh in front of one of his guests? Well, make yourself comfortable, because today we're going to discover the 12 most embarrassing moments you can have in public. An old African aphorism says that a painful experience generates great distrust. South Korean MMA fighter Park Dae-sung seems to apply this saying wonderfully since he was falsely accused of sexual harassment by a young woman. Indeed, Park had been charged with this abominable offense at Road FC Young Guns on December 31st, when he held a ring girl by the waist when taking pictures. It is certainly true that Park grabbed the girl in a rather abrupt way, but it is also important to know that this is part of his job. However, after being the subject of such an accusation, Park flatly refused to take pictures with a ring girl after her victory at the Road FC $0361M tournament. The fighter, fleeing from the young woman, even shouted at her to stay away and especially not to come near him. We had to run after Park to finally take a picture of him with the pretty young ring girl, but it was without counting on the perseverance of the fighter, who at the moment of taking the picture lowered his head to the ground in a very clear sign of submission. In martial arts, it has never been very smart to lower your guard or turn your back on your opponent. But it is even dumber to taunt your opponent in the ring while making those first two mistakes. And yet this is exactly what the young English MMA fighter, Joe Harding, did. During the British Challenge competition in the featherweight section, he faced the Frenchman Johan Segas. Dominating his opponent from the beginning of the fight, Joe didn't hesitate to chamber him by mimicking dance steps. But after only a few seconds in the third round, and after yet another provocation, Joe Harding was really going to regret his sarcastic behavior towards the Frenchman. Indeed, just as Joe was sketching a ridiculous dance, a powerful round kick sent at lightning speed by an irritated Johan Segas sent him straight to the mat, where he would stay for a few minutes. Fortunately for him, Joe Harding finally got up from that painful knockout, but the same cannot be said of his pride. By definition, a slip of the tongue is a mistake made when speaking and usually consists of expressing something other than what was intended to be said. Daria Gavrilova, a 21-year-old Australian tennis player, must have felt the same sense of unease described by Freud, with a very embarrassing slip in front of a packed stadium. When asked about her third-round victory over French player Kristina Mladenovic, who is counting towards the Australian Open, Daria simply replied that she was good from behind.
I'm good from behind. Oh.
Realizing the enormity of his statement, which was the cause of laughter throughout the stadium, Daria blushed like a cauldron about to explode, before trying to dissipate his unease by talking about his future matches. With the COVID pandemic-19, many companies have opted for teleworking as a way of limiting unnecessary travel by staff. Performance is the same as in the office, although, at home, we're pretty much free of any dress or professional rigor. Finally, this is not always the case, and when attending a work video conference, it is better not to forget to turn off your webcam before going to the toilet. Jennifer completely forgot to turn off the camera on her laptop while she was doing her big errand, which left her colleagues speechless. Laughter is uncontrollable by nature, but journalists and TV hosts have several tricks to guard against it. Finally, most of them, because the host of this Flemish channel seems to have skipped his self-discipline classes, and his serious show about people and their problems, will turn into a real circus. Indeed, as soon as one of the guests' presents was given the word, the journalist laughed and laughed, without even being able to control himself. The guest's voice was so hilarious that every time he opened his mouth, the host could not help but laugh with tears, to the dismay of the entire assembly.
Maar ook soms de lieve woordjes.
The discomfort will become even more oppressive when another guest takes the word and we discover that he too has the same vocal timbre problem.
Ik heb hetzelfde. Ik ben eigenlijk bijna vrij.
At that moment, the host bursts into a huge laugh that never wants to leave him. fame attracts cameras like neon light attracts moths, it's well known. And when you're immensely famous like Jose Mourinho, the lenses are constantly pointed at and leave very little privacy for the old coach. Jose was just trying to escape from a swarm of fans and paparazzi who had come to welcome him on his way out of Wembley Stadium, so he tried to jump over a fence instead of going around it. But as he is no longer in his 20s, the old Portuguese coach will take a nasty, embarrassing fall in front of the incredulous and surprised eyes of all those present. Mourinho will get up almost immediately looking completely embarrassed, cursing himself inside for sure, for having made such a tiny show of himself, when he could have easily gone around it. We were taught very early in school that you should never sell the bear's skin before killing it. But some footballers, no doubt driven by an excess of adrenaline, don't hesitate to celebrate goals before they've even fired a shot. But sometimes it is also the goalkeepers who think they have stopped a decisive ball, and then let their joy explode without knowing that the referee has already scored the goal. In this video, you can see a player missing a penalty by sending the ball violently hitting the crossbar, which will make it bounce high into the sky. Believing he had been saved by his own goal, the goalkeeper let his joy explode, while the penalty taker was dismayed on the spot. At the same time, the ball, which had taken a short trip through the clouds, came back down to earth and, with just a few prodigious leaps to its head, headed towards the goal. This reporter could give you some very good advice: always make sure you have gone to the bathroom before getting in the car, or do an interview. Indeed, this young woman has really suffered from the agony of live TV. When in the middle of an interview with her guest, she lets out a fart that soon turns out not to be a fart at all. Extremely uncomfortable since the beginning of her interview, the young journalist was giving very clear signs of her indigestion, having probably eaten curry that was too spicy for her taste at lunch. The result was nauseating, to say the least, when the pretty little presenter couldn't help herself, unfortunately for her, in front of the rotating camera. And as if that wasn't enough, she had decided to wear white pants that day. We can say that it was not her lucky day. Americans are very fond of public marriage proposals, with the man on his knees, the ring in his box, and the whole shebang. But while the idea may seem romantic to many, it remains a real test of strength for the marriage candidate. Especially the one who must not only face the gaze of the public present but also face the possibility that the lucky one will say no. How could a man survive such humiliation? The answer lies in this video shot in a mall in the United States, where a young man makes his proposal in front of a live audience. The young bashful lover was first seen trying to rouse people to become witnesses. Then, once his girlfriend arrived, he gave her the whole big show. Kneeling down like in the Hollywood romance movies, the young man at the height of his emotion offers him a ring and at the same time his eternal fidelity. But to his embarrassment, the sweet young lady simply refuses the marriage proposal and walks away quietly, leaving the young man almost speechless. Faced with this pathetic spectacle, laughter soon erupts from the hilarious crowd, stirring the young man's wound even more, before he is finally consoled by a good Samaritan. What could be more embarrassing for a denture wearer than to see it unhooking and falling out of his mouth in public? Now, imagine that this situation involves a young woman, especially on her wedding day. Needless to say that it will cause her an almost unbearable shock. Yet this is what happened to this young bride who saw her dentures come loose and fall into the same wine chalice where her own husband was going to drink. Not knowing what to do after losing her false teeth in the glass, the young bride finally plunged her fingers into her dentures, while displaying a beautiful toothless smile. She gave her husband an honorable mention, however, and he showed no sign of disgust, proof enough of her blind love. Managing live feeds is a long-term undertaking for even the most experienced journalist, and this video shows just how stressful and trying this job can be. In the middle of live coverage, this poor journalist had to deal with the brutal intrusion of noisy fanatics, who probably thought it was too cool to be on TV, even though they're pathetic. The journalist remained fairly calm, but another, more brutal intrusion this time, made him completely lost the control, so much so that he interrupted the live feed and went to settle scores with the person who had pushed him. You have to always be courteous with journalists because their nerves are finally on edge. When we talk about the notion of fair play in sport, it is important to emphasize that it is as much about one's opponents as it is about one's own teammates. However, Slovak volleyball player Daniela Zakovic, who plays her club football in the Philippine League, forgot all about that principle, intentionally slapping one of her teammates in the face and making her cry live. Indeed. Following a breakdown in communication, the two players almost ran into each other in a vain attempt to save the ball. Frustrated to no end, the Slovakian player then had no hesitation in reprimanding her teammate on the pitch with a painful shot to the back of the neck. Almost immediately regretting the move, Žakovic took her victim in her arms and apologized to her almost immediately. So, what do you really think of these 12 highly embarrassing situations? Which one impressed you the most? Give us your thoughts in the comments.